Hello and welcome to Gettable, AFL.com.au's trade, draft and free agency show. I'm Riley Beveridge. I'm joined as always by Cal Twomey. Cal, how you going?
Good, Riles. Another big week at Gettable. Can't
Yes.
wait. This show is going gangbusters. If you're not on now, get on because it's only getting bigger.
It's a massive episode. I'm really excited about the episode we've got coming up. Winston Rouse from Phoenix Management Group will join us in a moment. Looks after a number of massive clients, in particular Darcy Parish and his Sava Radigalia, to name just a few. Got a couple of new segments which we're going to get to a little bit later, Cal.
I've got a prop down here.
Oh, I'm
pretty
worried,
excited
I'm
about
nervous,
my prop.
I'm excited. I'm all range
No
of
wizard
emotions.
hats. No wizard hats this week.
No wizard hats, which is lucky. Of course, you can follow us on Instagram at Gettable, 2Ts, all of the latest news on our social media platforms. It's been another massive week, though, for Gettable, hasn't it, Kel?
It has been. I was actually walking into the office this morning, chucking on my Spotify, and a little bit of Tupac came on, and I just heard hit him with a little bit of Gettable gospel, and the Gettable gospel is spreading far and wide. Hey, it's actually reached your show. Well, your second show. You're right, you're not as good show. The round so far. I heard Kane Corns on the weekend promoting Gettable while he was actually on another platform.
Gettable.
But I stopped when he said that and nearly started laughing on air. So lucky I made it through there.
And James Brayshaw, another one, he's been commentating. He's got through the Port Adelaide St Kilda game last Friday night, and he just wanted to let everyone know what he was going home to watch as well after the game.
Speaking of Gettable.
It's good. It's always good.
If you hear any Gettables, send them through. The Gettable Gospel, we're calling that segment.
Let us know. DM us at Gettable on Instagram. But, Cal, it's been a massive day for footy. We're about to have a 19th team with Tasmania entering the competition. There's a lot to get through over the next couple of years before Tasmania does get into the AFL. But the list build's going to be particularly intriguing given what we've seen from Gold Coast and GWS, which is more than a decade ago now, and how the mechanisms will change in terms of the concessions that Tasmania gets and who the players they'll be targeting will be.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to jumping into who they could actually have a go at right here, because it's going to be a massive talking point amongst the clubs. It already has been a talking point amongst the clubs. How do they siphon off their players? Who do they keep available to the clubs? How are these list rules going to be built and implemented? There'll be things that are taken from how Gold Coast and then Greater Western Sydney were designed and set up, and the things that worked, the things that didn't. I think there'll be a number of ways that players and this list is brought together. So there'll be Tasmanian access. We know that. They'll have priority access to Tasmanian prospects coming through the draft system. Potentially even priority access to players who are from Tasmania or who have Tasmanian links. Who are contracted or not at other clubs. They'll have access to out-of-contract players. They'll be similar to the free agents, essentially, when they do come into the competition. Every player will be a free agent of sorts to Tasmania. Now, the compensation will come back to those clubs if they lose them, similar to what happened when Geelong lost Gary Ablett and Nathan Bock left Adelaide to join Gold Coast, and Callum Ward left the Bulldogs to join the Giants as well. There'll be draft compensation coming back their way, but that'll be a part of it as well. I think they're going to get access as well to 17-year-olds and some pre-selection there, which has been a big part of how this has all played out as well, and been a big part of how these other clubs have built too.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Giants a couple of years ago when they got access to players who had turned 17. The rule was if they turned 17 between January and April, they could pre-list them as underage selections. The Giants worked that mechanism really well. They got Jeremy Cameron, Dylan Shield, Adam Treloar through that. I like what the AFL did with the Giants in enabling them to get access to a mini draft. So the mini draft picks was a similar sort of situation across 2011 and 2012 when they got 4 players over 2 years that they could then auction off to other clubs. So obviously they got Jaeger O'Meara and Brad Crouch in 2011. They gave Gold Coast gave up pick 4 for Jaeger O'Meara. Adelaide gave up essentially pick 10 for Brad Crouch. The year later, they got Jack Martin and Jesse Hogan. Gold Coast gave up pick 2 for Jack Martin, and Melbourne gave up picks 3 and 13 for Jesse Hogan. So it just enables these clubs, after they've built their list, the core of their list through their first draft, to get additional draft picks through the door.
Speaking of draft picks, I think they're going to be handed a lot. There's going to be, I feel, a caveat on a few of them to be traded. And similar to what we saw North Melbourne do last year with their assistance package from the AFL, they landed Darcy Tucker and Griffin Logue as part of those deals that came through from the AFL with Fremantle. I think they'll be given some of these picks to, again, auction them off for the best players that can come down and join them via those selections. So that would then create a bit of a market, because clubs will want to get their hands on whatever is it pick 3, pick 5, pick 7, pick 10, whatever it is that the AFL decides. Clubs will want and be eyeing off those picks. but also know that there might be some players within their own grasp that they can offload and do for that. I also think there's going to be an element of maintaining the draft integrity when Tasmania does come through, because the lesson of the expansion sides and the franchise era that came through then was that the sides that were midway through a rebuild or early in a rebuild just suffered because they weren't able to access that top-end talent. So you look back to that compromised era of North Melbourne, Essendon, Richmond, those clubs, Carlton to some degree, all missing out on some early selections because those other clubs had come in and really, hogged the draft pool right at the top end. I think they'll do that again, but I also think the AFL will maintain and maybe protect pick 1, pick 2 of that year's draft so that the club that is struggling that time doesn't have its future wiped away via Tasmania entering the system. So that's a little bit, it's going to be hard. Yeah. It's going to be hard to find that balance of setting up a new team and also keeping the other clubs in the market and in the ballpark, because you look back at the previous era, you can argue that it extended Hawthorn's dominance as well because those other sides weren't able to, push through. This isn't chat GPT. You can't just put it in there and hope that it spits out the formula that works, because it's not. There's always going to be some bumps, but I think the points that we've spoken about are the key parts that are going to be a part of it.
How do you think it's impacting club decisions now, in the sense that if you've got a player that's coming out of contract now, do you try and look to extend them beyond 27, 28? Or how do you think it impacts club decisions now with players that are coming towards the end of their contract?
Absolutely. The best players will be eyed off to sign longer-term deals so that they're in the club's keeping. So they then have the opportunity to hold them if they want to or if they can. So that's a big part of it. These long-term deals for the Stars, I think, will be pushing through past the Tasmanian entrance time, if they can. The other part of it is, what do they look at from a draft point of view? So there's a couple of good players in this year's draft pool from Tasmania. Riley Sanders is one. He's playing at Sandringham at the moment. He's averaged 32 touches and a goal in the opening weeks of the Coates Talent League. What do they do with him? And Colby McKercher, another player who's a bit of a Zach Merritt clone with his ball use, had a really strong start to the season with Tasmania. I think he's in that top 15 to 20 conversation to start the season. The clubs draft them and hope that they can really settle them into their state, wherever that is, knowing that down the track the Tasmanian side might have easier access to bring him home. Or do they sort of have that in mind and say, let's hold here? Personally, I think the clubs will just back themselves in if their player's good enough and want to keep them. But the other part of it is, for the clubs that have these Tasmanian players already on their books, the likes of Chase Jones, if you're Chase Jones, who's out of contract at the moment, you probably wouldn't be signing anyone any further than the Tasmanian entrance day, would you?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Look, he's out of contract. He's
and then
just
you can leverage
good.
The situation when you become a free agent.
Yeah, and he's 27 in 2027.
Yeah.
He's been at the club then by 9 years. He was drafted in 2018 as a first-round pick. So that's where these decisions are definitely coming into the situation at the moment. The other part of it that hasn't got too much traction as well is that Tasmania will essentially, you'd imagine, have what would you call it, an academy set up. So that'll take away the North Melbourne Next Generation Academy zone, which has obviously been in Tasmania for a number of years. So that's something that will be a factor. The last one, I think list sizes probably have to be cut.
Yeah, okay.
To open up a couple of positions from each club to then go through and create some depth, because the last thing the AFL wants is an uneven competition and an uncompetitive Tasmanian side from the start.
What about targets? The fun stuff. I mean, because there's a lot of
All
players.
right, let's go through some names.
Well, there's already a lot of players that I think, and you look at the 2019 draft, because they're the players that will hit fate, as you've called it, their free agency 8th year in 2027. Those sort of players like Caleb Sarong, Hayden Young, Noah Anderson, Tom Green, Will Day, Cozzy Pickett, Trent Rivers. They're the players that are already signed until 27. So that's interesting. But a whole bunch of players who aren't signed to 27 eventually probably will get added to that mix. So guys like Matt Rowell, Cody Waitman, Mitch Georgiades, if he stays at Port Adelaide beyond this year, Kitty Coleman, Chad Warner's a really interesting one at Sydney as well.
Sam de Koning.
A lot of those players will then hit probably their free agency year for the first time in 2027.
They're the targets I'm going for. If I'm starting up the Tasmanian team, I'm saying Caleb Sarong, come on down.
Yep.
Massive money. Be our captain. You're in the peak of your powers. Come along down and really own a club. Or the Will Day types after 8 years. I think they're the type of players that I'd be going for, with the addition of some of the guys who might be at the deeper end of their careers. After that point, Jack Steele's coming out of contract in 2027. How good would he be as an addition who's someone maybe in the latter stages of his career, been in the competition for 13 or 14 years by then? So there are a few of the names that I'd be looking at. Of course, heading into 2028, there's about 6 or 7 players in the competition who are coming out of contract at that point and signed through to there. Darcy Moore, Angus Brayshaw, Isaac Heaney, Tom Papley, Josh Dunkley among them. So they're the other guys that you look at.
It's going to be really interesting to see. But Cal, we're excited for this. We've got a new segment. Talk us through it.
It's the gong. This segment's called the gong. G-O-N-G is the important part here to remember. So it's called Gettable or Not Gettable. And I'm going to bang the gong like that if there's a player who I think is gettable, and I won't bang it if I don't think they're gettable.
Okay, I love it.
Do you want to? We're going to whip through them. This is going to be a recurring segment. We do appreciate everyone for sending through their questions and names for us.
And you can do that if you want to know if someone's gettable or not gettable. Hit us up at Gettable on Instagram. Let's start with Mason Redmond.
Do I go a bit harder?
Yeah, go a bit harder. Mason Redmond, gettable or not gettable?
Not gettable.
Oh, love it.
I just think that. Yeah, he's been there a long time. There's been some interest clearly from Adelaide, but if I'm leaning towards this, I'd say not gettable.
On that, can we stop talking about the go-home factor of Mason Redmond because he's from South Australia? He's from Millicent, so it's closer to Geelong essentially than it is to Adelaide. It's not really a go-home factor.
I think at some point in his life he'd want to end up back on the farm in Millicent, but as I agree, you're not going back to live in Millicent.
Adam Tomlinson. Oh, love it.
Gettable. 1 year to go on his contract. Was gettable last year. Will be gettable again.
Cam Rayner.
Not gettable.
Agreed.
Signed through to 2025, but that'll be his fate. Yeah, I think at that point that there's going to be probably a question for him, but not gettable this year.
Jack Ross, only 2 games this year. Got it. Gong.
1 year to go on his contract. Been in and out of the side for 5 years. I think that would mean you're gettable at the right price.
Ben Mackay.
VG, very gettable.
The double gong.
It's funny. Ben Mackay's an interesting one. I think the market has cooled on Ben Mackay. The best ability is availability, and he's played 55 games since being drafted in 2015. And I think, going back a couple of months, the start of the season, that foot injury was probably didn't come at a great time when you're entering your free agency year, and there's clubs out there willing to spend a lot of money on you and put the pitch forward. In the last 3 weeks since he's come back, he's conceded 11 goals. That's second equal most in the competition. Clearly, he's playing in a side that's on the bottom of the ladder, so the numbers are going to be weighted against him on that. But I think the market's cooled, and that's at the high price.
Yeah.
If it's at a lower price, then I think there'd be clearly more takers.
Yeah.
But temperatures changes. We're in Melbourne. It's cool at the moment. The sun can come out again.
Yeah, I think Carlton's interest is overblown here as well.
Okay.
I think just because his brother plays there doesn't mean that he's going there. Unless he's shopping himself for 200K, I can't see Carlton being a realistic option for him.
I think like a 400 opens up the door. 400 to 500 opens up the door. 600 more. 7 and 8, that's where I think that the cooling has come.
Yeah, I'm just not sure the Blues are a player there. Jack Graham. It's a little gong.
Slightly gettable. Has a trigger for next year, but almost moved last year. So if you tour a club, you're always kind of slightly SJ.
SJ. Jack Darling.
Well, I'm going to go with not gettable. It turns 31 this year. End of 2024 is when he's contracted to. Partially gettable. PG if West Coast wanted to pick, but
Noah Anderson.
Noah Answorth.
Noah Answorth, sorry.
Noah Anderson is definitely not gettable.
Yes.
Noah Answorth signed to the end of 2025. I think not gettable.
Okay. Dylan Shield.
No, not gettable. I don't think anyone's picking up his remaining contract. And he's actually playing
now?
some really good footy this year, and
Completely
they've
agree.
settled on that centre square group.
Denver Grainger-Baras.
Gettable. Look at that move. How good's this segment going? See the move? Year to go on his contract, but gettable.
Yeah.
And has been in and out of that side, mostly out.
Yes.
Top 10 pick. I think key position defenders like him. There's been a few who've gone past him in that Hawthorn lineup. I think clubs will be definitely looking at him.
And as we've said, absolutely on the radar of other clubs. Logan McDonald.
Not gettable. Signed.
Yeah. Jordan Sweet. Gettable.
Gettable. Rucks are always gettable.
Yeah.
They can have 5-year contracts. They can have 6 years to go, 5 years to go. Saw that with Brody Grundy last year. West Coast looked last time.
Yep.
Out of contract this year.
Mitch Georgiades. Oh, small one.
He's going to be an interesting one because has suitors, but Port also want to keep him as they would. Very close with a lot of the guns, Zach Butters and Connor Rosie at Port Adelaide. But the knee injury adds a complication there.
It does. Finlay McRae.
I just think if you're looking for opportunity, he's contracted. I'm not saying that he's seeking it at this point, but other clubs will be watching him to see is he one that you can pick out of a good team. because he hasn't played this year, only a couple of games last year, 9 games in his debut season, putting up good numbers, but contracted, so that adds a complication.
And lastly, Devon Robertson. Big gong.
Yeah, Gettable. Had a sniff of things last year, but stuck around. Levi Ashcroft, who I watched on the weekend coming through as well. I watched him dominate a midfield game for his school side on the weekend, Brighton Grammar, and he's coming through, and that midfield's pretty stacked as it is, so I think he's gettable.
Maybe we should play Gettable or Not Gettable with our next guest, because got a few, and we're looking forward to hearing from him. It's Winston Rouse from Phoenix Management Group.
Bring it
I
back.
love it. I reckon we should bring it back.
Gong him.
Let's bring the gong back, and let's bring Winston in. All right, well, joining us now is a very special guest, and one that we've been looking forward to for quite some time. It is Winston Rouse from Phoenix Management Group. Winston, thanks for joining us on Gettable.
Thanks, Riley. Thanks, Cal. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming in.
You looked after a number of quality clients, but probably none going better at the moment than Darcy Parish. Might start there, obviously a free agent this year. Where are things at with his decision?
Yeah, Darcy's having a really good start to his season. He's enjoying things there at Essendon under new coach. And look, he's someone who's pretty relaxed with it all. He's just focusing largely on his footy, and it's something that we'll tend to address later on in the season. It just gives you that chance to give a bit more information about everything, but so far so good, quite positive.
We did a Cal's Q&A a couple of weeks ago, which we all loved, and he spoke very openly about his situation and his future and playing for Essendon and what he wanted to see from the club under Brad Scott before he ultimately committed. Has anything changed from that point?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, so no, nothing's really changed other than a couple of rounds of football and again, more positive signs for how they're going and under a new system. And it's something that I don't touch base with Darcy about it weekly. It's something that, every 4 weeks, are we working through, same sort of timeline, something that we will work around back into the year.
Yeah.
What about his relaxed demeanour about it all? I don't think doing that interview with him and knowing him pretty well, he's not one to stress about these things too much. How have you sort of played that with him, given it is, as he said, a big decision for him? It's his biggest decision of his career, essentially.
Darcy's very relaxed. I think that's he's not someone who thinks about it all too much. He'll just go out, play his best football he can, and really try and probably recreate some of that 2021 form, be the best teammate he can in a new system that so far so good. They've really done some good things.
What about his relationship with Brad? He did speak pretty highly about him, and Brad's spoken as well about, look, we have to create the environment and the culture whereby it's an easy decision for him to stay. There's been some ups and downs at the Bombers over the last, ever since he arrived, essentially at the end of 2015. How critical a factor will that be, that friendship and relationship under the coach? Yeah,
definitely critical. The coach-player relationship is often the key driver most players' decision, especially coming up into that free agency period. You want to get all the information, know that there is consistency and stability at the club level, CEO, list manager, coach, because it's your big decision about where I'm going to spend the rest of my career. And again, speaking to the start of that relationship, it has been a really positive one where we've sort of seen the benefits of what's happening with Darcy on field, but the greater team as well.
Is there an overall approach you take with free agency years, as players reach their footy fate?
Footy fate, look, it differs. You're trying to work out what the player ultimately is looking for, and also that there's alignment with the club as well. So each player is certainly different. Had a number of guys probably do that pre-agent signing the year before because they had everything lined up that they thought that's exactly going back to that stability of coach, CEO, footy manager. So it's easier, I suppose, to make that decision rather than going in without sort of too many unknowns.
Just on Darcy Parish, you can't say this, and you might disagree. If anybody thinks that Essendon can afford to lose Darcy Parish, they're not watching Essendon games.
Yeah, it's been very important.
Very important, and he makes Zach Merritt better. Zach Merritt makes him better, and they both make Essendon much, much better. Zava Radicale, that's
doing my job.
I think had a good pitch there.
Cal's Q&A and Cal's editorial. What else we got? Zava Radicale, a different set of circumstances, out of contract, not a free agent though. Last year we know he put his hand up to potentially get to Port Adelaide. That didn't happen. How did he come out of that trade that didn't go through while he was contracted at the Cats?
Yeah, Asava never really fell out of love with Geelong. He had an interrupted year through injury and then some selection, some form that didn't go his way. To their credit, they gave him, to try and reinvigorate him a little bit, they gave him a go down back, and that really sparked some some good moments for him. Didn't lead to a flag for him, and he got pushed out of the side late. But it showed enough athletically to give him some confidence about what that looks like. He was identified by a number of clubs. I think, someone who sits in front of Ken, he's got a great sales pitch and is able to get a few across. So it was more about how excited he was about maybe working under Ken out of a fresh start and the opportunities for key backs. You're not fighting with 3 premiership players, going for the tools. So there was some original. Look, very disappointed because he was keen to go and chase that opportunity. And there's always a bit when someone doesn't get what they want from a trade point of view. There's that initial lull, but then very quickly Geelong wrapped their arms around him, and it showed the high threshold they had for letting him go was their confidence in what they could bring. What he could bring to them in 2023. And they probably armed with a little bit more information about what was happening with their tools. So they kept him to it. They've wrapped their arms around him. He's got opportunities early. And he's only sort of 12 games into his key back career generally. And we've seen some good signs. He's had some coaches' votes. And, that's been a really positive year for him so far.
How is he finding that move down back?
It's all new, and he's excited by it. It's freshened him up in many ways. It probably suits how he goes about it and how he plays, and he's got some really good people around there instructing him, from Tom Stewart and the like, about positioning, and so he's kind of in his traineeship in many ways around it, but it's moving really quickly, and he's taken some scalps.
What about his contract? How do you play that one with him?
You take your time with it. I think as long as he's playing consistently and the opportunities are there, that's something that will be addressed in the back end of the year. Tom
Papley signed a 5-year deal last year as a pre-agent, taking him through to 2028. Can you talk us through that one, how it came about? Obviously, it's great to get him done early. How did that talk sort of eventuate there?
Look, it was probably something that after what happened in 2019 and the non-trade seemed like it was never going to happen, be a long way, and every year he was going to ask. Probably the situation that changed. COVID affected a lot of people in a lot of ways. His personal situation back home actually improved over that stage, and then being in the hub with the clubs and understanding that everyone was kind of going through a similar situation where you're away from your families, and then the bond they created. Full credit to coach John Longmire and footy manager Charlie Gardner and their welfare network about how they worked with Tom over that time, and then just every year it just built and built, and as the team became more successful and his career really continued to flourish, it sort of became a bit more of an easy one. This is where I want to be, this is what I'm willing to commit to the club, and they're willing to commit to me. So he was thrilled to get that done and not have to worry about all the stress that came with that.
What do you reckon was a bigger turnaround, Riley? Paps and the Swans, or Paps and me? We had a rocky start.
It was frosty for a
frosty
while.
start there, but we're back on track.
What can you just talk us through what it's like to manage Paps? I mean, we all see him on the footy field every day and every week. And
does he ever just walk through the office like...
Annie, his partner's a star. So I don't know how she puts up with him. He's exactly how he is on field as how he is off field. He keeps me on my toes the whole way through. So it's always entertaining. Yeah, every day's different with Paps. And
now he's coming for our jobs as well. He's starting his own little burgeoning media career.
Has he claimed his prize yet that he won at the Terang Footy Club? His teammate, Tommy McCartan.
Yes.
Having gotten to know the McCartans, I reckon when he was drafted to Sydney, there was probably a pretty small chance that he'd be still there and locked in for 9 or 10 years. He's signed through to 2027. Have you seen his evolution at that club and in that city?
He was just so young.
Yeah.
When he got drafted, if he's born 48 hours later, he's in the next draft, and he still had year 12 to go. He was so baby-faced. He was still that whip-cracking kid who, I drove around to Paddy's house and signing Paddy, and there was this little Tom just in the backyard on a bike. And so he came in as young as anyone, really, into an AFL system, and then to move into state. And again, credit to the club and how they work with him through that. And look, playing games early helps.
Yep.
It certainly helps, feeling part of it. They've got a great culture there. And so he sort of grew into it as the years went on. Again, probably the COVID years where they're all in hubs, it makes them gel even more. So He's been really comfortable. He's got a great relationship with the coach, and so it was, an easy decision to extend.
One of the great success stories of the mid-season draft when it was reintroduced in 2019 was John Noble. Obviously kicked the match winner on the weekend as well on Sunday. It was an important goal late. Coming towards the end of his contract this year, where are things placed with him?
Yeah, look, having probably his best year so far, as a number of those pies are, something that we'll start talks on pretty soon around John. He has made his intentions clear to them and them to us, so it's something in the next little bit we'll sit down and map out what that future looks like.
What about Reece Stanley, out of contract as well? He's been on these shorter-term deals over the last few years, but got his flag last year, which was well-deserved. Does he want to play on as well next year?
Caught up with Reece recently, outside of the little eye incident he's had. His body's feeling really good, and it's sort of feeling better and better year on year, which has been great for someone who's had some restrictions, limitations at different stages. So, and with their need for the number one ruck that he has, he's definitely someone who is keen to continue on if his form and his body continues to hold up like it has.
One of our favourite players on Gettable has always been Sam Walsh. I know he's one of your favourite players to manage, I'm sure, as well. The number one pick in 2018. He was one who avoided this spotlight, I guess, on his contract decision last year to get through to his free agency year, that 4-year deal. Talk us through that and how that played out. And also, I can imagine he was like a caged animal with his injury, knowing Walshy enough.
Yeah, definitely. Look, the injury point. Yeah, he actually hasn't had a lot of injuries throughout his history, so he hasn't missed a lot of football since probably 12. So it was new for him. He had a little bit of insight to the start of last year where he had a little bit of an injury, and caged animal's probably fair with him, but he understood the bigger picture and worked through that with the club really well, and sort of back, and he's starting to build and build and build. From his decision to take his contract through to fate was largely about
catching on.
It's a good one. Largely about him feeling comfortable. They've invested in him, the number one pick, what he was willing to invest back in them as well. And really minimising distractions was big for him. He was someone who was really confident early that this is what I want to work through. I don't want the speculation for it at the time. I know in my mind that this is what I want to commit, and so if there's a way we could get it done quietly and through that course of 12 months out of contract, then he would do that, and that's the way it went.
Jermaine Jones, one of my personal favourites, and a good success story of the SSP period as well, having left Geelong and then gets a second chance at West Coast. He's been great there this year, one of the bright spots for them, plays his 50th game this week. How's he been enjoying his time over there, and how have you seen his development to the footballer he's become now?
Yeah, look, he's enjoying it at a high level. He's playing probably his career best year again, and it's credit probably Darren Glass, who's no longer at West Coast. He was the one who really identified the need and the upside of Jermaine, and how he got squeezed being a 3-year rookie at Geelong and what they were looking to do in that draft. So he's as fit as he's ever been. He's working as hard as he ever has, and they've been, Mark McCoskey and the likes have been excellent around helping Jermaine get to where he is, and he's really heavily involved with the Kellys as well. Tim Kelly's sort of taken him under his arm, and he's got quite a bit of involvement there. So loves it over in Perth, playing his best football. The versatility, sometimes he gets thrown around a lot, but it looks like halfback's probably his best spot with his speed.
Last one before we give you your Gettable prize pack.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big surprise. Your favourite trade or draft or trade or free agency story in particular, something that's, you go back and think, we're really happy with how that one turned out for the player.
Yeah. Look, the Reece Stanley getting to the flag one's a good one, and how that all went about. But look, hard to go past the delisted free agency of Jared Lyons and how it happened in the space of, I got the call from Brisbane, on a Friday about sort of catching up, and I didn't know what it was about. And said, look, is there any chance that this could, be part of something that looks after they lost Beams, brought in Neil, and it just grew legs really quickly from there. We had to have all willing parties, and we had to hide or keep it away from the media in a sense, because I think if it had got legs media-wise, I think it might have been shut down about the way it happened and how important the outside probably saw Jared for Gold Coast and what he was ability to do, and how it sort of helped Brisbane through. So it was something that came on last minute, but through relationships a long way throughout the year. And Dom Ambrosio, who brought Jared through to the Gold Coast when he was there, we had, I reckon, a mid-year discussion. I asked the question, have you ever done it twice? Have you ever brought the same player in twice? As a leading, because at the time Jared was out of the Suns team. Yeah. And we just never mentioned it again for 4 or 5 months, and then it came up at the end of the year. So really proud of what he's done. But it was, he was on a Saturday. I called him, mate, I've got something to talk to you about. He was at a wedding. The next week was his own wedding. I flew up, that Saturday night and said, this is what it is. Brisbane were there on the Sunday, and by the Monday I was asking him basically to make this life-changing decision, and away it went.
You would have been the hero of the wedding. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. This is your Gettable shirt. You can take that with you. We want you to wear that up. Point it to the camera there. There we are. There.
This is, Burleigh Beach under 16 sort of area.
Exactly. I'm looking forward to seeing you up there at the under 16s with that on. People will be stopping you down the beach saying, I've seen you on Gettable. I've seen that. So we appreciate you coming in for a chat.
Perfect.
Always good to have you on, and look forward to seeing how these boys play out their seasons.
Thanks, Chance. Great show.
Right, we thank Winston for his time. He was very informative on a number of issues. Cal, we've got one final segment that we're going to introduce today on Gettable. It's the pitch.
The pitch.
The pitch. We've been looking forward to this one. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to pitch to an out-of-contract or gettable player around the competition. I'm going to act as one club. You're going to act as the other club. And we're going to pitch our idea. So if they were going into a meeting around the future, what would the club be pitching towards them? Today we're going to do Tom de Koning, very relevant at the moment. So you're going to be Geelong.
I'm going to be Andrew Mackey with my Geelong scarf on, because that's what list managers do.
They wear their scarves.
They wear their scarves,
Now, we're going to be tight on this. You've got 60 seconds, Cal. Our producer, Jack Haley's going to yell out.
All right.
You've only got 60 seconds to pitch to Tom de Koning.
Go.
Ready? 1, 2, go.
Come on down to the Cats, Tom. Come on down. We played your brother in the ruck last week. Did you see that? Did you see him in the ruck? He didn't want to do that. You don't want him to do that. We want you to do that. We want you to be in the ruck. We want you to come down and play that role for him. Imagine being back playing with Sam. Hey, remember Sam? Speaking of Sam, you were there grand final day. How good was grand final day? We've made a prelim or grand final 12 of the last 16 seasons. You know what you're getting down at Kidinia Park, and you'll get a scarf like this as well if you want. Come down here, play some good footy, go to the beach, have a surf, be close to your family and friends. Everybody's down here. We can't pay you as much as other clubs, but that's okay, Tom, because what you're going to do is you're going to come down and you're going to wear the hoops, and you're going to win a premiership, and you're going to play well year after year after year with your brother. And you know what? No money can be put on that price. You can just keep coming in. You can dominate that position. You can work with Reece Stanley over the next little bit to really have that good partnership. And then after that, you are ready to go.
Oh, Jesus. There goes Jack.
That was Andrew Mackey.
I liked it. All right, I'm Sauce.
You're Sauce at, sauce at the Saints?
I'm Sauce at the Saints.
I'll keep this on anyway. All right.
All right, we love this.
3, 2, 1.
Tom, I want to talk about football and lifestyle. I'll start with the football aspect. Come down to the Saints, form the most athletic ruck partnership in the competition with Rowan Marshall, or form the best young forward partnership you can with Max King. Yeah, you could join Geelong. You could win another flag with Geelong. Everyone's won a flag with Geelong, though. I could have won a flag with Geelong when I wanted to. Instead, I stopped them in 95, and we'll stop them again this time, Tom. Me and you.
You've got 95!
If you win one at St Kilda, you'll be remembered forever. If you win one, at Geelong, you'll be just another number, just like the rest of them. Now I want to chat to you about lifestyle, Tom. Now, Tom, I know you love your surfing, but have you heard of the Firewire special, Tom?
What's that?
Well, no, I haven't heard of that either until last night when I Googled where to buy surfboards and filtered the price from highest to lowest, because you'll be buying as many of those surfboards as you want when I'm dumping 800 grand over 8 years at your doorstep, which will be right next to Brighton Beach. You'll be able to surf wherever you want. It's
there's the waves at Brighton Beach.
It's only an hour to Geelong anyway.
Well done. We've got a future in this. Let us know who won the pitch.
There'll be a few nervous list managers, I reckon.
Yeah, nervous that they have to watch this.
All right, it's been a great episode. We loved your work today, Cal. Thanks for Winston for coming on. AFL.com.au for all the latest trade draft and free agency news. Inside Trading back again Thursday morning. Another bumper episode coming for you next week as well. We'll see you.